The rain-soaked streets of Seattle glistened under the streetlights, but Caleb's heart raced faster than the city's pulse. He stood outside the dimly lit cafe, clutching a crumpled letter, its ink smudged from his trembling fingers. He loves me. He has to, Caleb thought, the words a lifeline against the storm of doubt brewing inside him. Caleb, 28, had always been the quiet one, the artist who poured his soul into charcoal sketches and late-night poetry. His curly brown hair fell messily over his hazel eyes, which held a cautious hope as he pushed open the cafe door. The bell jingled, and there he was, Elliot, 32, leaning against the counter with an easy confidence that made Caleb's breath catch. Elliot's sharp jawline and piercing blue eyes turned heads, but it was his words, those late-night texts filled with vulnerability, that had drawn Caleb in. They'd met 3 months ago at a local art gallery, where Elliot had lingered over Caleb's sketches, asking questions that felt like they saw straight through him. "Cal, you made it," Elliot said, his voice warm as he crossed the room. He wore a tailored gray sweater that hugged his frame, his black hair neatly combed. Caleb smiled, his nerves easing as Elliot's hand brushed his arm, a touch that felt like a promise. They sat in a corner booth, the cafe's hum of chatter fading as Elliot leaned closer. "I've been thinking about you all day," he said, his gaze unwavering. Caleb's heart fluttered. He wanted to believe every word. Their connection had grown fast, intense. Elliot, a rising star in Seattle's tech scene, seemed to balance ambition with a sincerity that disarmed Caleb. He'd shared stories of his childhood in rural Oregon, the pressure to be someone he wasn't, and how meeting Caleb felt like finding a piece of myself I didn't know was missing. Caleb, who'd spent years guarding his heart after a string of rejections, felt seen. He'd grown up in a small Idaho town, where being openly gay meant whispers and sidelong glances. Seattle was his fresh start, and Elliot was its brightest light. As they sipped coffee, Elliot reached for Caleb's hand, his thumb tracing slow circles. "I want us, to be real," he said. "No games, just you and me." Caleb's doubts melted. He'd spent so long feeling like he didn't belong, but here was someone who chose him. "I'm in," Caleb whispered, his voice thick with emotion. Elliot's smile was radiant, but behind it, something flickered, a shadow Caleb couldn't yet name. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. They wandered Pike Place Market, laughing as fish flew through the air, their fingers intertwined. Elliot surprised Caleb with rooftop dinners, the city skyline sparkling below. Caleb's sketchbook filled with portraits of Elliot, his sharp profile, the way his eyes softened when he laughed. But there were moments that gave Caleb pause. Elliot's phone buzzed constantly, and he'd turn it face down with a quick, "Work stuff." At parties, he introduced Caleb as "my artist," a label that felt both proud and possessive. Caleb brushed it off. Love, he told himself, was about trust. One night, at a crowded gallery event, Caleb overheard a conversation that made his stomach twist. Elliot was across the room, laughing with a group of colleagues, his voice carrying. "He's perfect, isn't he? The sensitive type, totally devoted. But I can keep him hooked for months." The words landed like a punch. Caleb froze, his glass trembling in his hand. Was he a game to Elliot? A challenge? He wanted to confront him, but fear held him back. "Maybe I misheard," he thought, clinging to hope. Later, as they walked home through the drizzle, Elliot's arm around him, Caleb's mind churned. "You okay?" Elliot asked, his tone gentle. Caleb nodded, but the seed of doubt had taken root. He needed to know the truth, but the thought of losing Elliot, of being alone again, felt unbearable. As they paused under a street lamp, Elliot pulled him close, whispering, "You're everything to me." Caleb wanted to believe it, but the words felt heavier now, like a script he didn't understand. Caleb's days became a tightrope walk between love and suspicion. Every touch from Elliot felt like a question mark, every smile a puzzle. He started noticing patterns. Elliot's charm was a performance, dialed up at parties, dimmed when they were alone. Yet Caleb couldn't pull away. The way Elliot looked at him, like he was the only one in the room, still set his heart racing. They spent a weekend at a cabin in the Olympic National Forest, a trip Elliot had planned with meticulous care. The forest was alive with emerald moss and towering pines, the air crisp with promise. Caleb, sketching by the fire, felt a flicker of the early days when everything seemed possible. Elliot knelt beside him, his hand resting on Caleb's knee. "This is what I want," Elliot said, his voice low. "Just us, away from the noise." Caleb's heart ached to believe him, but the memory of that gallery conversation gnawed at him. One evening, as they hiked to a secluded lake, Elliot opened up about his past. "My dad never got me," he said, staring at the water. "He wanted a son who'd follow his rules, not someone who'd choose his own path." Caleb, moved by the vulnerability, shared his own story, leaving Idaho, the loneliness of starting over. They kissed by the lake, the world falling away. For a moment, Caleb let himself trust again. But back in Seattle, the cracks widened. At a tech conference after-party, Elliot was in his element, working the room while Caleb stood awkwardly on the sidelines. A coworker, Mara, a sharp-witted woman in her 40s, pulled Caleb aside. "Be careful with him," she said, her eyes kind but firm. "Elliot collects people. He loves the chase, not the commitment." Caleb's chest tightened. He wanted to argue, to defend what they had, but her words echoed his fears. That night, Caleb scrolled through Elliot's Public X profile, something he'd avoided out of trust. The posts were polished, photos of Elliot at events, cryptic captions about winning and conquering. One post, dated weeks before they met, chilled Caleb. "New challenge accepted. Let's see how long this one lasts." The vague words felt like a confession. Caleb's hands shook as he set the phone down. He needed answers, but confrontation terrified him. What if he was wrong? What if he wasn't? The next day, Caleb suggested a quiet dinner at home, hoping to reconnect. Elliot agreed, but his phone kept buzzing, and his answers were clipped. Over pasta, Caleb mustered the courage to ask, "Are you happy with me?" Elliot's smile was quick, practiced. "Of course, Cal. You're my muse." The word muse stung. It felt like another label, not a promise. Caleb pressed further, his voice trembling. "Am I just a game to you?" Elliot's face flickered, a mix of surprise and something darker. "Don't be dramatic," he said, laughing it off. But the dismissal only deepened Caleb's unease. By the end of the month, Caleb was unraveling. He stopped sketching, his creativity stifled by doubt. He confided in his best friend, Javier, a 30-year-old barista with a knack for cutting through bullshit. "You deserve someone who sees you, not someone who's playing a game," Javier said over coffee. "Ask him straight up, Caleb. You're stronger than you think." Caleb nodded, but fear clung to him. He'd built so much of his world around Elliot. Could he face the truth? Caleb's resolve hardened, but so did his dread. He decided to test Elliot, to see if the sincerity he craved was real. He invited Elliot to an art show he'd been working toward for months, a small, community-driven event in Capitol Hill, far from the glitz of Elliot's world. "This means everything to me," Caleb said, handing him the flyer. Elliot's smile was warm, but his eyes darted to his phone. "Wouldn't miss it," he said. The night of the show, Caleb's heart pounded as he hung his sketches. The gallery was small, filled with local artists and their supporters, a stark contrast to the sleek events Elliot frequented. Caleb's pieces were raw, vulnerable, portraits of strangers, each capturing a moment of quiet truth. He scanned the crowd for Elliot, hope fading as the hours ticked by. At 9 p.m., a text, "Stuck at work, Cal. Kill it tonight." Caleb's stomach sank. He'd wanted Elliot to see him, really see him, but the absence spoke louder than words. After the show, Caleb walked home alone, the Seattle rain mirroring his mood. He replayed every moment with Elliot, the late-night talks, the promises, the way Elliot's touch had once felt like home. But now, he saw the gaps. The way Elliot steered conversations to himself, the way he deflected when Caleb asked too much. At home, Caleb found a note Elliot had left weeks ago. "You're my favorite adventure." The words, once sweet, now felt like a taunt. The next morning, Caleb called Javier. "I'm done guessing," he said, his voice steady for the first time in weeks. Javier suggested a direct approach. "Invite Elliot over, lay it all bare." Caleb agreed, texting Elliot to come by that evening. When Elliot arrived, he was all charm, pulling Caleb into a hug. But Caleb stepped back, his heart racing. "We need to talk," he said. The conversation started calmly, but unraveled fast. Caleb asked about the gallery comment, the ex-post, Mara's warning. Elliot's face tightened, his charm replaced by defensiveness. "You're overthinking this," he said. "I care about you, Cal. Why can't you trust that?" But Caleb pressed, his voice breaking. "Am I just a trophy to you? Something to win?" Elliot's silence was deafening. Finally, he sighed, running a hand through his hair. "You're making this bigger than it is. I like you, okay? But yeah, I like the challenge. Doesn't mean I don't care." The admission hit Caleb like a tidal wave. He'd wanted love, not a game. Tears stung his eyes, but he held Elliot's gaze. "I deserve more than that," he said, the words raw but firm. Elliot tried to backtrack, his voice softening, but Caleb was done. "Please leave," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Elliot hesitated, then walked out, the door clicking shut like a final note. Caleb sat on his couch, the weight of the truth settling in. He felt shattered but strangely free. For the first time in months, he picked up his sketchbook, his pencil moving across the page. The lines were messy, raw, but they were his. The weeks after the breakup were a blur of grief and growth. Caleb threw himself into his art, each sketch a step toward reclaiming himself. He started volunteering at a local LGBTQ+ youth center, mentoring kids who, like him, had grown up feeling out of place. Their stories, of courage, of carving out their own paths, reminded Caleb of his own resilience. He wasn't just surviving, he was rebuilding. One evening, at a center fundraiser, Caleb met Leo, a 29-year-old social worker with warm brown eyes and a quiet strength. Leo was different, no grand gestures, just steady presence. They bonded over shared stories of small-town upbringings and the fight to be seen. When Leo asked Caleb to coffee, there was no pressure, just curiosity. Caleb said yes, his heart lighter than it had been in months. Their coffee dates stretched into hours, then weeks. Leo listened when Caleb spoke, his questions gentle but deep. They walked through Seattle's parks, shared books, and laughed over bad sci-fi movies. Caleb sketched Leo one night, capturing the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled. Unlike Elliot, Leo didn't fill the silence with charm. He let it breathe, let Caleb be himself. Months later, at a quiet park under cherry blossoms, Caleb told Leo about Elliot, not the pain, but the lesson. "I thought love meant chasing someone's approval," he said. "But it's about being enough as I am." Leo took his hand, his touch grounding. "You are enough," he said simply. Caleb believed him. Caleb's art flourished, his work featured in local galleries. He painted not for validation, but for truth, each piece a testament to his journey. At one show, he saw Elliot across the room, his arm around someone new. Their eyes met, and Elliot gave a small nod. Caleb returned it, not out of anger or longing, but closure. He wasn't a trophy or a game. He was Caleb, whole and healing. As he stood with Leo later, the city lights stretching before them, Caleb felt a quiet certainty. Love wasn't about being chosen. It was about choosing himself first. The journey had been messy, painful, but it led him here, to a man who saw him, to a life that felt like his own. Under the blossoms, Caleb smiled, the weight of the past lifting. He was enough.